Welcome back to Uncensored. Demands for a full ceasefire are now growing across the world. One of my next guests, Cenk Uygur, has been among the loudest voices calling for one. His name was written on an Israeli bomb to be dropped on Gaza, along with that of Andrew Tate and Mohammed Hijab, all previous Palestinian guests on this show. Well, I'm joined now by Democratic presidential candidate Cenk Uygur, Mosab Hassan Yousef, the son of the Hamas co-founder Sheikh Hassan Yousef. Mosab has opposed the terror group since defecting in the 90s. And the former Chelsea and Israel manager Avram Grant joins me live in the studio. Avram, great to see you, and I'll come to you in just a moment. Cenk, I want to start with you because pretty extraordinary to see your name scrawled on a IDF bomb. Just first of all, what was your response to that?
Yeah, it's of course disheartening to see it. It's sick. They're going to drop those bombs on Palestinian civilians. They're probably going to murder babies and grandmothers with those bombs. That's why if I'm president, I won't send Israel a single dollar. Not only the $14 billion they're considering now, but I would end all funding to Israel as they have massacred civilian after civilian, 19,000 dead, 9,000 children butchered. I do not want a single American tax dollar going to help Israel commit war crimes. And if they think they're going to intimidate me by putting my name on their bombs, they've got another thought coming to them.
We're at a state in this war where Hamas is believed to have around 35,000 terrorists. At best estimates, 7,000 to 8,000, if you accept the IDF figures, have been killed, and that's not been confirmed at all. But if that is the case, that's only 20% of the total. That means that 80% of Hamas terrorists have not been killed yet. Again, I'm staying with you, Cenk, for this. I mean, if you're Israel and your mission statement is to eradicate Hamas, the calls for a ceasefire are going to fall on deaf ears, aren't they? Because they're determined, as we can hear from all the rhetoric, to finish the job as they see it.
Yeah, so let's be clear. I mean, I saw the Mark Regev on before me, the propagandist for Israel that you had on. And first of all, he thought it was funny that my name was on the bombs. I don't think that the children that they're murdering think it's funny. And the idea that they are not indiscriminately killing civilians is absurd. So they dropped 2,000-pound bombs in residential areas. America never dropped a bomb larger than 500 pounds in a residential area in Iraq, and we did great damage in Iraq, 4 times larger. The area is the size of Las Vegas, and they've dropped 29,000 bombs, nearly half of which are unguided missiles. Then they shoot 3 hostages dead without even checking when they had a white flag and no shirt on at all. And if those 3 hostages were Palestinians instead of Israelis, no one would have even noticed, because now at this point, one more devastating fact. Hamas and what they did on October 7th was terrible, and they killed 846 civilians. The rest were soldiers. Now Israel has, even if you take the IDF numbers of saying that of the 19,000 they killed, is 5,000 they claim is Hamas. It's an absurd number, a total and utter lie, not backed up by any evidence. But even if you accepted it, that means Israel has now killed 16 times as many civilians as the terrorist group Hamas.
Here's the question.
So what does that make Israel?
Should Israel leave Hamas 80% intact? Is that good for anybody?
So, no. So now we get to the absurdity of what Israel says. We are going to stay there until all of Hamas is gone. How? How do we know if they're all gone? How do we know if they've surrendered? How do we know if the Palestinians have turned on Hamas? These are all impossible standards meant to eradicate Gaza entirely, and in fact, they've almost done it already. 90% of the people in Gaza are homeless. We're picking out the body parts of family members every single day in Gaza. It is one of the, and now even the New York Times and every human rights group acknowledges this is one of the worst massacres, the biggest war crimes committed in our lifetimes. America in 20 years in Afghanistan did not kill as many civilians
should they leave
as Israel
Hamas,
has killed in 2 months.
But should they leave Hamas
So now
intact?
let me give you an answer. Let me give you a productive way to do this, how to drive Hamas out. You make a peace deal with the Palestinian Authority. That buys them the credibility to be able to say to the Palestinian people, we have delivered a state for you, the thing that we have been looking for our entire lives. And now, because we have delivered that for you, we are going to run Gaza. That can drive Hamas out in a way that is organic and driven by the Palestinians themselves. If you just try to murder as many civilians as possible in Gaza, That is not an answer for actually getting Hamas.
Okay.
And by the way, the bombs have shown that they do not affect the tunnels.
Okay.
So all they're doing is killing civilians.
Let me bring in Mosab Hassan Yousef. You're the son of one of the Hamas co-founders, of course, and renounced that back in the 90s. You believe that Israel should finish the job. They should eradicate Hamas.
Well, absolutely, because all the calling for a ceasefire is calling for surrender. They want Israel to surrender to the terrorist savages and sit down at the table and negotiate with them. And this is absolutely rejected.
Is there any deal to ever be done with Hamas? You know Hamas very well, obviously, through your father. Is there any deal to be done with a group like this now?
There is no deal with the devil. There is no deal with Hamas as long as they pose a threat against children, against civilians, and destabilize security in the entire region. If they get away with their crime, and their crime is not just any crime, it's a genocide. If they get away with their crime, what will they do tomorrow? They have to be punished and they have to be held accountable. All the calling for ceasefire, those are the people who want to give a lifeline to Hamas. And this is not acceptable.
Mosab, you tweeted on Friday something that many people found incendiary. You said, never trust anyone who identifies as a Muslim. They may appear as a harmless sheep when they are alone, but when they're in a pack, they will begin to show their tusks. I have zero respect for any individual who identifies as a Muslim, and I may consider the use of force when it comes to Islamists. What did you mean by that? Many people have said, well, why would you say that about, over 1 billion people?
Well, I don't care how many they are. Any person who put the religious identity above the highest interest of humanity, I have no respect for these people. The majority of the Muslim people identified with Hamas, supported Hamas. Show me how many Muslims out there who condemned Hamas genocide. Why? Is it because Jewish blood? This is what I meant, that the Muslims, as long as they give Hamas cover, I have no respect for them. As long as I identify as Muslims, I have no respect for them.
But I've interviewed a number of Muslims on this show who do not support Hamas and have renounced them. Cenk himself came on the show before and immediately denounced what Hamas did on October the 7th.
I am dealing with a majority of Muslim countries, governments, an entire nation. Don't tell me about an individual here or there. We're talking about a majority of Muslim people
I'm only saying that because
who fail to take their moral responsibility.
Understand,
they
but
fail to take their moral responsibility because it's Jewish people.
I understand, but you did say literally every Muslim. You said don't trust anyone who identifies as a Muslim. That's all of them. And what I'm saying to you is I've interviewed many Muslims on the show who are not extremists, who do not support what Hamas did, who believe what they did was a terror attack.
But they still have the need for a religious identity, which is a false identity. Individuality is something else. Freedom is something else. A person who knows who they are above all national and religious identities. There is no need to pose as a Muslim in a critical time in the human history. This is the time to take moral responsibility. What's the point of identifying as a Muslim while people threatening to erase an entire Jewish community? This is not acceptable. This is why I want the Muslim to stand and be clear.
Okay.
Up to this point, I haven't seen the Muslims taking a moral stand, a firm stand against Hamas. You know why? Because they are Muslims. Because they are Muslims against the Jewish people. And this is where I want to push the Muslims to the point where they need to stand firmly and say, it doesn't matter if they are Jewish or Christians. A genocide is a genocide and is rejected. Hamas is rejected. I want to see this clearly. Then after that, I will have respect for the majority of the Muslim people. As long as they fail their moral responsibility, I have no respect for them.
Okay. You made your point very firmly